My name is Grace Whitmore. I'm 48 years old, a lieutenant general in the U.S. Army, and a mother to a 10-year-old boy named Noah. And I want to tell you about the moment everything I thought was safe broke. It was a quiet Tuesday morning. I had just returned from Brussels after a long NATO briefing. I wasn't even supposed to be home that early. My boots were still dirty from the base. My medals were crooked. I was tired, hungry, and honestly just ready to be a mom again. Then I saw the envelope. No stamp, no return address, just my name in a handwriting I hadn't seen in months. Mark Ellison, my ex-husband. Inside was a custody petition, not just from him but signed by my own parents. Have you ever opened something that changed your life in 1 second? Have the people you trusted most stood against you, if that's ever happened? If you've ever felt like a stranger in your own family, you're not alone. Feel free to share just one word in the comments. Still here. So I know you made it through too. I stood in the hallway holding the letter like it might burn through my hands. I didn't move, not for a while. The air inside the house felt too still, like the walls were listening. Then I turned to the last page. 2 more names written in blue ink. Susan Whitmore, Harold Whitmore. They didn't sign as witnesses. They signed as supporters of him. Words jumped off the page. Concerns regarding Grace Whitmore's emotional stability, prolonged military absence. My mother once held my hand while I gave birth to Noah. My father built his crib. He called him my little fox. Now they were saying I was unfit, unstable, too far gone to be a mother. I sat down on the edge of the couch, still in uniform, boots dusty, chest heavy with ribbons I suddenly hated. The silence pressed against me. Nothing had exploded, but something inside me broke. Quietly. All the same. The letter slid from my fingers. I looked at the photo of Noah on the mantel. Gap-toothed grin. One arm around my neck. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I belonged in that picture. I called my mother. She picked up after 3 rings. Said my name like it was a task. Grace. I didn't even get a word out before she spoke again. You should have seen this coming. Her voice wasn't sharp. That would have been easier. It was calm, prepared, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. You've been gone more than you've been here. No one needs stability. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't ask why. I just said, soft and slow, you're supporting Mark. There was a pause, then another voice came on. My father. This isn't an attack, Grace. It's a course correction. Course correction. Like my son was a shipping mistake, like I was off track, like motherhood was something to be revoked, then reassigned. I ended the call. The screen went dark, but the silence stayed. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, boots still leaving dust on the rug, chest still aching from words that weren't shouted, just delivered with full intent. All my life I thought family meant loyalty, meant someone would always be in your corner. But now I wasn't just alone. I was surrounded. That night I didn't unpack. I didn't take off my uniform, didn't touch the dinner I microwaved and left on the counter. I just sat. The envelope lay open on the table. Next to it, a yellow legal pad. Blank, quiet, waiting. I picked up a pen, wrote 3 names across the top. Mark, Susan, Harold, my ex-husband, my mother, my father. 3 people who once held my child, laughed with me at his birthday parties, stood beside me at his first school recital. Now they were on the other side of the paper, of the courtroom, of me. I didn't cry. I've been through explosions, field burials, sleepless nights under black skies in countries most people can't pronounce. But this was something else. Not grief, not rage, something quieter. Colder, like a soldier waking up to a war no one told her had begun, not overseas, but here, at her own front door, and the battlefield field was family. The next morning I started with the facts. Pulled every file Mark had submitted to the court. Dates, claims, accusations, all wrapped in official language, but soaked in something uglier, emotionally unavailable, neglectful after deployments, struggles to connect with Noah. Each sentence hit like a slow bruise. They didn't just build a case, they built a version of me, one I didn't recognize, but they didn't build it alone. My parents' statements were attached. Paragraphs signed and dated, their words dressed in concern but cut like knives. Grace has always prioritized duty over family. We've voiced concern for years. My mother wrote that last line. The same woman who saved every letter I sent from Kabul, who waited by the phone through 3 deployments, who sewed my name onto every uniform I ever wore. I didn't scream, didn't throw the pages, reached for a highlighter, and I began to circle. One lie at a time, line by line, page by page. They wanted to define me. But I had receipts. I pulled open an old file box from the hall closet. Inside years of records, flight logs, call histories, emails from teachers, photos Noah drew for me, scanned and saved. I printed screenshots from every video call, every bedtime story read through a screen, every birthday I attended in pixels, but never missed. They said I was absent, but I was there. Through signal delays, through 3 a.m. time zones, through blurry connections and frozen frames. I gathered school notes signed in my handwriting, clinic forms, text threads, anything that placed me in his life. The case they wrote was clean, sharp edited, but my proof was messy, lived, true. By noon, the table was covered in piles, not just papers, but years. I labeled folders by theme, presence, communication, care. The version of me they tried to build, I was already tearing it down. By evening, I knew what had to come next. I didn't trust their words, didn't trust their experts. So I found my own, not someone local, not someone in Mark's circle, a retired Army psychologist, now working in civilian custody evaluations, someone who'd worn the same boots, carried the same weight. She agreed to meet with all of us, me, Mark, my parents, and Noah. She didn't rush, didn't diagnose from a distance. She listened. No clipboards, no judgment, just steady eyes and long silences that made the truth come forward. With her, I didn't have to explain why I left, or how it felt to return to a child who'd grown inches without me. She already knew. While others saw absence, she saw sacrifice. She didn't tell me what to expect, but when I walked her to the door, she said one thing: "You're not the unstable one here." 3 days later, someone knocked on my door. Not a lawyer, not Mark, not my parents. It was Mrs. Dobbins, my neighbor across the street. Widowed, gentle, always planting roses too early in the season. She held a small flash drive in one hand and something heavier in her eyes. "I didn't mean to overhear," she said. "But I think you need to know." She glanced over her shoulder before stepping closer. "Last week, your mother was on the phone. I didn't catch all of it, but she said Mark would handle things if she helped to get Noah away from you." My stomach tightened. Mrs. Dobbins hesitated, then handed me the flash drive. "My son set up a security system, picks up porch audio. I didn't mean to record anything, but once I heard what she said, I couldn't keep it to myself." She left without waiting for thanks. I stood there in the doorway, frozen, flash drive in hand, and a new kind of silence behind me. Not grief, not betrayal, evidence. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the living room, laptop, open flash drive plugged in. No background music, no distractions, just the waveform on the screen, and my mother's voice crackling through the speakers. She needs to be reminded that family matters more than rank. This will teach her. Mark said if we help, she'll never see Noah again. I didn't flinch, didn't pause, just listened. Let every word sink. Let every syllable bruise something old inside me. This wasn't panic. It wasn't impulsive. It was planned, coordinated. A woman who once kissed Noah's forehead goodnight, now helping to erase me from his life. I didn't throw the laptop, didn't scream into the dark. I reached for my legal pad, flipped to a clean page, wrote one word across the top in black ink: leverage. I stayed up that night, didn't sleep, didn't move from the couch. Beside me was a shoebox, old, worn at the corners, Noah's name written in faded marker on the lid. Inside letters. 23 of them, all written by me, none ever sent. Notes from deployments, updates, stories, words I never knew if he'd see. Some pages smudged, some folded from travel, each one a lifeline thrown across oceans. That night, I added another. I pulled a blank sheet from the stack, picked up the same pen, and wrote, "Dear Noah, I know things feel confusing right now. You're hearing things I can't control, but I need you to know I never stopped fighting for you. Now, I didn't finish it. I folded the page gently, placed it on top of the others, then closed the box, not out of fear, but to protect what was still mine. By week's end, the case file was 2 inches thick. I labeled every section by hand. Allegations, timelines, contradictions, witnesses. Tabs in bold marker, red, blue, yellow, clear. Each page clipped, numbered, cross-checked. Deployment logs showing I never missed a custody exchange. Emails confirming call schedules. Therapist notes, teacher updates, pediatric reports, all pointing to one thing: connection. Not perfect, not always present in person, but never gone. I printed screenshots of bedtime calls, circled dates, attached Noah's drawings with my name in the corner. No theatrics, no drama, just proof. They had built their case with emotion, assumptions, convenient forgetting. I answered with presence. Paper by paper, quiet, precise. And at the very top of the binder, I clipped a photo. Noah on my shoulders, laughing, his fingers tangled in my hair. A still frame of what they tried to erase, but couldn't. The hearing date was set. I didn't tell anyone what I planned to wear, didn't ask for advice, didn't explain the choice. That morning, I stood in front of my closet, skipped the blouse, skipped the black. I reached for my uniform, the one with 4 stars on the shoulders, the one they all forgot I earned. Each ribbon, each pin pressed and placed in silence, not for show, for memory. For every night I kissed a photo instead of Noah's forehead. For every time I served while they judged from comfort. By the time I buttoned the last button, my spine was straight, my heartbeat steady. I wasn't walking in to be heard. I was walking in to be seen. No one expected it, not the clerk, not the guards, and especially not the people who used to call me daughter. The courthouse was humming. Lawyers pacing, phones buzzing, papers rustling in tight stacks. I stepped through security. Metal detector beeped once, then cleared. Silence followed behind me. One guard stood straighter, another nodded. No one spoke. My heels tapped against the tile, slow and sharp. Each step counted, each one deliberate. Mark was already inside. Dark suit, polished shoes, his lawyer whispering something close. Behind him, my parents. My mother's eyes widened when she saw me, then narrowed. My father looked down, pretending to adjust a paper he wasn't reading. I didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't flinch, just walked to my seat, set the binder down, and folded my hands. Noah's photo tucked inside. No one asked me why I wore the uniform. They didn't need to. They remembered who I was. But more than that, they remembered who they underestimated. The judge entered. Silver hair, calm voice, known for fairness, not sympathy. He looked at the room, then at me, and stood. Not because of rank, because of respect. A ripple moved through the courtroom, small gasps, shifting chairs, hushed surprise. I didn't look around, didn't react. I let the silence speak for me. The hearing began. Mark's lawyer opened with practiced concern. Routine, stability, emotional safety. The words slid across the floor like oil, too smooth, too controlled. Then my attorney stood. No drama, no raised tone. He opened the binder, turned each page with intention. Proof of calls, proof of care, proof of everything they said I wasn't. And then the flash drive. He pressed play. My mother's voice filled the room. She needs to be reminded that family matters more than rank. Mark said if we help, she'll never see Noah again. Someone behind me gasped. But I stayed still. I'd already heard it. I just needed them to hear it too. The judge didn't interrupt. He let the room absorb it, every word, every breath. Then my attorney turned to the next tab. Financial records, bank statements, highlighted lines, a single transfer, $28,000 from my parents' joint account to Mark's just 2 weeks before the petition was filed. He called it support. They called it a gift. The judge raised one brow. Not surprised, just done pretending. Interesting timing, he said. Flat, clear, you could feel it shift. The courtroom, the weight. Mark leaned in, whispered to his lawyer. My mother stared straight ahead, but her hands twisted in her lap. My father's pen tapped a rhythm with no purpose. Power moved that day, not with shouting, not with anger. It moved with evidence. It moved with truth, and it sat unshaken in the seat across from them. The judge closed the file slowly, leaned back, hands folded, eyes on me. Lieutenant General Whitmore, do you have anything to add before we recess? I stood, straight, still. The The weight of my uniform settled across my shoulders like armor I didn't need to explain. I met his gaze, voice steady, no hesitation. No, Your Honor, I believe the facts speak for themselves. He nodded once, not just in agreement, in acknowledgement. And that was it. I didn't need to beg for my motherhood, didn't need to plead to be believed. I had lived it. Day by day, call by call, letter by letter. As the gavel dropped, I sat back down and didn't glance behind me, but I heard her voice low breaking. She didn't have to do it like this. No, I didn't, but they did. And maybe that's the difference. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited. Cameras, flashbulbs, questions I didn't answer. I wasn't there for them. I walked past the noise, through long hallways up 2 flights of stairs. Noah was waiting in the supervised family room, feet swinging, sketch pad in his lap. He looked up as I entered, paused eyes scanning the stars on my shoulders. "You wore your stars?" he whispered. I knelt beside him. "Yeah, buddy, I did." He looked at me for a long second, then wrapped his arms around my neck tight, like he was holding on for all the days I'd been gone. My throat closed, but I held him back. Not a word from the judge could have meant more than that hug. That was the real ruling, right there, in his arms. We sat together on the courthouse steps, just the two of us, his hand in mine, small fingers curled tight. He didn't speak at first, didn't need to. The sky above had softened blue, fading into gold. Long shadows stretched across the pavement. Then he looked up, eyes clear, steady. "Are you mad at Grandma and Grandpa?" I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I didn't know which truth he needed to hear. So I said the one that wouldn't bruise. "No, baby, I'm not mad." I let the silence hold it, then added softly, "I'm just sad." He tilted his head, confused by the difference. I didn't explain. Some things don't need fixing, only feeling. And in that moment, he felt it with me. Not all of it, just enough to know I was still his. Noah looked down at his shoes, scuffed, small, still growing into the world. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "They told me you didn't want me." My breath caught, the kind of stillness that hurts before it breaks. "They said you left because work was more important, that you didn't come back on purpose." I reached for him before I could even speak, arms around his shoulders, head tucked into my chest. "That was never true," I said. My voice cracked, but I kept going. "I came back for you every time. I called, I wrote, I sent videos. I never stopped thinking about you. Not one day." His eyes filled, not with tears, but with something heavier. I thought maybe I did something wrong. I held him tighter, firm, still. "You didn't. You never did." He didn't say anything after that, just leaned into me quiet like he used to when he was small enough to fit in one arm. I rested my chin on his hair, closed my eyes, let the stillness soften. "You were never the reason I left Noah. You were always the reason I came back." He nodded just once, slow, like something inside him had finally moved. A crack, not a collapse. But it was enough. Later that night, we drove home, not to a base, not to a guest room. Home. He asked for boxed mac and cheese and orange slices. I let him choose the plates. He folded the napkins carefully, said Grandpa taught me, then paused. "But I think I like how you fold them better." I didn't reply. I just smiled and set 2 forks down, one for him, one for the piece of me I was finally getting back. After dinner, Noah disappeared into his room. A minute later, he came back holding a shoebox, old, edges frayed, same size as mine. He set it on the table, pushed it toward me gently. "I kept these," he said. "Inside the letters, my letters. Some open, some still folded, all a little wrinkled like they'd been read and held then hidden." I reached in, fingers shaking just slightly. The first one, a drawing I sent when he was 7. A stick figure version of me standing under a caption, "Mama's always close, even far away." I pressed my hand to my chest. He looked at me, soft, steady. I didn't know if I was allowed to keep them, but I did anyway. I nodded, voice caught in my throat. He hadn't just heard me. He'd been listening the whole time. I tucked him in not long after. He pulled the covers to his chin, eyes already heavy. The room was quiet, familiar, safe again. I sat beside his bed, watching the rhythm of his breathing, slow, even. Then just as I stood to leave, his voice broke the dark. Can I call you Mama again? I turned back, felt something catch in my chest. Not pain release. I bent down, brushed his hair with my hand. You can call me anything, baby. But that one's always been my favorite. He smiled small and real and rolled to his side. I stayed a while longer, long enough for him to drift off, long enough to realize something simple and true. He didn't need an explanation. He just needed me to still be there. The house was dark, only the hallway light left on. I stood outside Noah's door, hand resting on the frame. No applause, no headlines, no verdict echoing through a chamber, just that moment. A quiet breath, a child asleep in his bed, arms wrapped around a stuffed bear he once said he was too old for, and me still in uniform, still standing. This was it. The real victory. Not the courtroom, not the flash drive, not even the judge's nod. It was this, his small body still, his chest rising and falling, and the sound of nothing going wrong. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, sat down at the table beside the open shoebox. 23 letters. Now read, now returned. They tried to win with paperwork. I answered with presence. The next morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds, soft, unbothered. Noah was still asleep, his shoes by the door. His sketch pad on the couch open to a half-drawn picture of us. I walked past it, fingers brushing the edge of the page, then sat at the dining table, my binder still there. Every tab, every truth. They thought I'd back down, that I'd fold under guilt, under pressure, under the names they once called love. But they forgot who I was. I don't yell, I don't beg, I build, I gather, I show up. And when I do, I bring everything with me, not just the facts, but the fire. They moved in silence, thinking I wouldn't hear. I answered in silence too, but mine came with weight and stars, the kind you don't need permission to wear. It had been 6 weeks. The court ruled. The press moved on. Mark moved out of state. I didn't follow up, didn't ask questions, didn't chase anyone for closure. Then last week, an email came from my parents. No subject line, just 3 sentences. We didn't expect you to embarrass us like that. You could have handled it privately. We're still your family. No apology, no ownership, just bruised pride dressed up as disappointment. I stared at the screen for a while, read it twice, didn't reply. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because I finally didn't owe them anything. They built a house on silence, then blamed me when the walls cracked. They lost the right to call it home the moment they locked me out of it. Noah doesn't ask anymore if I'm coming back in the morning. Not every night. But he still watches the door when I leave the room, still listens for footsteps before he falls asleep. Trust doesn't flip like a switch. It's a dimmer. Soft, slow, and right now I'm just grateful the lights are back on. We're learning each other again in small ways. How he likes his toast, how he hums when he concentrates, how he keeps one sock on and loses the other somewhere between school and home. He still draws, still asks questions I don't always know how to answer, but he looks at me like he remembers now. Not just the uniform, not just the fight, but the person who stayed when staying was hard. Last Sunday, we went to the park near our old house. The one with the faded bench and the elm tree that always drops too early in the season. I used to push Noah there in a stroller back when dandelions were magic and scraped knees needed band-aids with cartoon faces. After the walk, he asked if we could get ice cream. I said yes. He chose vanilla swirl with rainbow sprinkles. I got black coffee gelato. We sat side by side watching birds argue over a crumb. He looked over at me between licks. Do people know you're a general? I smiled. Some do. He thought for a second, then leaned his head against my arm. Do I have to call you that? I laughed soft and low. Only if we're on a battlefield. He nodded, and for once the world felt simple again. We stayed on that bench long after the cones were gone, his head still resting on my arm, his legs swinging, barely touching the ground. I watched the light shift through the branches. Shadows stretched, wind moved gently. No tension, no noise. This was the moment no ruling could give me, no affidavit could take away. Not a title, not a courtroom, not the silence I broke. This a boy who once looked at me like a stranger, now leaning into me without hesitation. It didn't come with applause. It didn't need to. Redemption isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet hand reaching back after everything tried to pull it away. People ask me sometimes why I didn't go public, why I didn't speak up earlier, why I stayed quiet, why I let them twist the story for so long. I get it. Everyone loves a revenge arc, a dramatic walkout, a courtroom speech that brings the room to its knees. But not all of us are taught to scream. Some of us were raised to be small, polite, invisible, told to smile through shame, to not cause trouble, to keep the peace even when we're breaking. They rewrote the story while I stayed silent until Noah asked me one night, "Why don't you fight for me?" He didn't yell it, didn't beg, just asked. Soft, curious, honest, and that was the moment I realized I already was, just not in ways he could see yet. I didn't win in court because I wore stars. I won because I brought truth. Not polished, not perfect, but real. I had logs, letters, calls saved in folders no one knew I kept. I had drawings, signatures, timestamps. And I had a child who still reached for me even when others told him not to. They tried to say I left too often, that I love from a distance. But love doesn't always live next door. Sometimes it crosses oceans, sleeps, intense, writes letters at midnight just to feel close. Some days I still think about the courtroom. How Mark never looked at me. How my parents looked but didn't see. That's the part that still stings, not the lies, but how easy it was for them to believe them. Sometimes I wonder when the news runs a segment and my name scrolls quietly across the screen. Do they see it? Do they sit in their living room, the one with the same couch, the same frame photos, and hear the anchor say, "Lieutenant General Grace Whitmore"? Do they feel pride? Do they feel shame? Or worse, do they still feel nothing? Because that, I think, was the most brutal part, not what they did, but how little it seemed to mean to them. The silence after, the absence of remorse, the way they moved on like it was just another form signed and filed. They saw my life as something to correct, to rearrange, to edit, but I wasn't theirs to revise, and I never will be again. Last night, Noah asked if he could take my old dog tags to school for show and tell. I paused, then handed them over. He wore them like they were gold, held them up to the light, let them dangle against his chest, too big for his frame. "I'm gonna tell them my mom's a general," he said, grinning, "but also that she makes the best grilled cheese." I turned away for a second, pretending to fix something on the counter. But my eyes stung, not because he remembered the rank, but because he remembered the warmth. That's who I always wanted to be. Not just the uniform, not just the fight, but the one who stayed, the one who showed up, the one who made grilled cheese on Tuesday nights without needing to be perfect. If you're still listening, if any part of this feels familiar, I want to tell you something no one told me soon enough. You don't need their permission to be whole. Not your parents, not your ex, not the people who only loved you when you stayed quiet, agreed quickly fit the role they wrote. Some of us were never the golden child. We were the ones who didn't fit, the quiet ones, the steady ones, the ones they underestimated until we stopped shrinking. You're not too much, you're not broken, you're not disloyal for choosing peace over performance. And if you had to walk away to protect your truth, you didn't betray them. They betrayed your becoming, and you survived it. That matters, that counts, and it's not too late to come back to yourself. They tried to erase me with carefully chosen words, paperwork, and practice concern. They thought if they said it enough times, I'd start believing it too. That I'd question my worth, my motherhood, my place. But I didn't disappear. I reappeared, louder in silence than they ever were in judgment. See, forgotten doesn't mean gone. Dismissed doesn't mean defeated. And quiet, it doesn't mean weak. It just means we were building something they never saw coming, brick by brick, proof by proof, memory by memory they never thought we'd keep. They left. They lied. They watched me drown, then blamed me for sinking. But I stood back up, not to prove them wrong, to prove to myself that I was never broken, just underestimated. So, if you've made it this far and something in you still aches, know this: you're not alone. If someone tried to rewrite your story, erase your love question, your place, and you're still standing, then you've already won more than they'll ever understand. This world is full of people who know how to speak louder than they listen, who weaponize silence, who dress control as care. But it's also full of people like you, like me. People who stayed soft without surrendering. People who kept showing up long after they were told they weren't wanted. People who are still here. So if you're one of them, drop those 2 words in the comments. Not for attention, not for pity, but so someone else can scroll past and whisper, "Me too." Sometimes the hardest part isn't the fight. It's believing you're worth fighting for when the people who raised you turn their backs, when love comes with conditions and loyalty feels one-sided. You start to question everything. But healing doesn't always roar. It doesn't come with music swelling or fireworks in the sky. Sometimes it's just one deep breath taken without apology, one step forward without needing to explain it, one letter saved, one photo kept, one child resting their head against your shoulder again. That's how the comeback begins. Not with noise, with knowing you were never the problem, knowing you don't have to carry their shame, knowing you can build something stronger from what they tried to break. And this time, you're not doing it alone. Some of us were never chosen first, never praised loudest, never held up at family tables as examples of how to live. We were the ones who stayed late, cleaned up, kept the peace, the ones told, don't make a scene, let it go. Be grateful it's not worse. So we learned to shrink, to disappear in plain sight, to carry pain so quietly it became a second skin. But silence isn't the same as surrender, and when the time came, we rose, not in fury, not in revenge, in clarity, in truth. We didn't need a spotlight. We needed space. And once we took it, we didn't give it back. The quiet ones are still rising, and this time we know exactly who we are. They thought they were writing my ending, one custody petition, one lie at a time, one signature in blue ink. They believed they could shape the story before I had a chance to speak. That if they moved fast enough, quiet enough, they could close the chapter without a sound. But I wasn't done. Because the truth, real truth, has weight. It lingers. It rises. And when it shows up, it doesn't need permission. They didn't see the files, didn't count on the recordings, didn't know I'd kept everything. They never imagined I'd show up in uniform, not for status, but for memory. They didn't see the stillness that would hold me steady. Didn't expect the sun who still reached back. They wrote the story, but I kept the pen, and I didn't let them finish it. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. It doesn't make headlines. Staying looks like lunchboxes packed quietly. Like sitting through school projects you weren't invited to the first time. Like listening, really listening, even when the answers hurt. It's letting Noah ask questions you can't always answer. It's holding space when he needs to be angry. It's not flinching when he says their names. It's grilled cheese on rainy nights, notes in backpacks, a hand always reaching back, no matter how many times it's been shaken off. This is what healing looks like, slow, unguarded, real. And this is what staying looks like. Not because I had to, not because anyone told me to, but because love, the real kind, never files the paperwork to leave. Tonight, Noah fell asleep with my dog tag still around his neck. His breathing was steady, one arm thrown across his pillow. Peaceful in a way that only children understand when they finally feel safe. I sat beside him, watching his chest rise and fall. No orders, no courtrooms, no signatures, just us. They tried to take him from me with paper, with pressure, with silence. But I answered with presence, with memory, with truth. He asked me once, why didn't you fight for me? And now he no longer has to, because I did. Not with shouting, not with revenge, but with every quiet choice to stay. This is the ending. They never wrote a boy who still calls me mama and a mother who never let go. Not even when everyone else did. If this story touched something in you, a memory, a moment, a silence you've carried alone, I hope you'll share it in the comments. Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear tonight. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, real, raw, and quietly powerful, don't forget to subscribe. We're just getting started. And you're meant to be here.